Hello there and welcome back to my videos. In this video we want to speak about my project here. It's called Authorized. I'm very bad to spelling, so I just say Authentication. It's the same. And I really hope before we starting I will explain a little bit about what we're doing, but I really hope you want to support me and just press on the subscribe button so you can help me to get more subscribers. And in the same time you will get more videos from me, and of course you are very welcome to just push the comments below about what you think about the video, and I'll be very happy if you want to subscribe me, of course. And then let's go, and now I'll explain a little bit about what should happen today. I will explain how you can create a session for a single user for this project, and then how we can get the session. If the session is expired, then I will create a new session, and then I will show you for the end of the video how you can update the session data, because then you can just log in with the user, request the session, and then keep the session for the single login on the exact device you want to log in, and then update the session data. It could be if you build a shopping cart, it could be a blog where you want to trace which user is editing the posts, or it could be on an iPhone when you use my code here to like a authentication API. It's up to you what you want to do with this code. It's completely free and you can find it on Github, of course. And now I think we will start with the Git session code, and for this we going for the library Flask and then the session. And inside here for the previous video I have the print commands here, and we just leave it a little bit for now. And before we continue I just need to see my own notes here. Yeah, we just to say here a logging, because we want to log this log info, and then we go for import logging gets session. That's what we want, and we say if request this one authentication succeeds, like this one. If that's true, then we will basically allow it to go in to check the session. If not, it's true, then we will not print out logging. We will log out and say session not allowed, authentication token not verified. That's what we want to say, verified. And then we want to response, because if you want to get a session and you're not logged in as a user, that means your authentication is not true, then it's not make any sense to create a session for you. So that's why I will do this. So it's just a security reason here. And then we're going to say unauthorized. It's a very complicated word for me here, and that's a little funny one. And then we're going up back here for this one, where we just want to validate about the token. And here we want to say 200. I want one for 200, and I want one for forbidden. So just 403, and just say forbidden. Forbidden. Yes, here we go. And I will comment this out because we don't here right now. Before we're going inside here, I will create the functionality for that and prepare for our ODM here over, and then we will continue to create this functionality up, of course. So let's creating the session ODM, and just going up here and say session, and what we want here is import OS, because I have some data in the environment variables where we can say the session secret key, so we know when we use this, then we creating a secret session key, so people couldn't guess what's happening here. And then we want to import from Mongo engine, and import the document first. Document here, and I know we will use more fields, but I will wait until we have this. And then we say session, document, and the document we need session ID. The session ID, it's a string field, so I'll go up here to say string field, and then we have the string field here. It should be required true, and we have the same for the account here, account ID. The account ID should be an object ID, so we very fast can bind it between the account and the session. And why we use this, it's basically because if you have 1 million of sessions and something is going wrong, and we later want to say this account should be signed out from all the devices because something is going wrong, then we can't find the sessions bind for this account. So that's why we have that this account ID. And on the other side, when we have the account ID, we can validate when the account it's sending the token to the server, and we open the token. And then we need to say, oh, we have the session ID with this. It's the session and the account ID is the same. It's matched, yes. That's meaning that if I'm logged in on your system, I can't overtaking in other accounts because we have bind a single session ID to a single account, and that's why we do this. And of course, this is requirement 2. And the next step we want, it's the data, the session data. We just have the field called data, but you can call it session data if you want. Let's do this. And the session data should be a direct field, and the default for this should be an empty directory. So when we create a session, we always have this field, and we just expect it's here. So that's will be perfect for us. And then we have a lifetime, and what the lifetime is, it's how many seconds this session should be kept alive. And I think that's a good thing, because then we can see how long time the session should be alive. Like normally I think if you use PHP, a session it's 10 minutes or something like that, and then you need to use a cookie. It's expired over time, and yeah, you know what I mean. In my case, I want to create a session systems based on like a cookie, but you just place a cookie or something locally on the device, on the browser, and something like that, where you say this is allowed for your browser or your device to keep this in so long. And when you get this data from this system, you will get a lifetime. So you have the last update time, and you have the lifetime where you expect, and I will sending the expire date back, and then you can keep tracking about, did I want to have it a lifetime in the same, or would I just be on lower? But when I send the expire time back, that's meaning after this date it's not invalidated on the server anymore. So we want to say infield, and going up here and say infield, and for default we just say 0. And I will of course change this a little bit, because we going back for the environment variables, but for now we just keep that. And then we need a provider. The provider should be object ID field, and because we in the future, when we are working a little bit with this project, I will create the option about the provider, and that's meaning we can add the providers and then bind sessions to a single provider. Like if I have 2 projects, I can create like 2 providers and then bind a session login for each. For now we don't do anything more, and then we have to create it add equal, and we need to update it add, and we need expires add equal, and then we need the date time up here, date time field, and over here we say this one should be required and this should be nothing. That's okay, and expire need to be required. And based on my know-how I know how my system is working, and then we can just remove a lifetime field, because why have lifetime where we will update every time you get that session. We will change the update add, and then we have the expire add, and the expire add, it's coming from the environment variable. So we can calculate, if we really want, we can calculate the update between the sequence between the update add and the expire add. So that's why we remove this now. So don't think about why we've done it, and I'm very sorry to confusing you. And then we have one more thing before we continue. That's the session life. Session life, it's session lifetime. We basically just move it from the ORM here and up for a variable. And we're going for OS get environment and session lifetime, and that's only if it's not none, else we will have a fallback for 7 days. 24 multiplied by 7, and one more down here. And now we basically have this done, and let's go in for the environment and going here for session lifetime and session secret secret key and session secret, and lifetime here I will just say 7 days, 404 and 8, and that's it. Now we have the ODM created. So let's going back for the functionality here down to create the new file called session and class session, and then we are good to go. The first function we want to create here should be a static, and it's just to say get. And what should we be getting here from? We need to account ID, and this is a string, and then we need a session ID. It should be onion. It's just meaning we need it's a string or none, and it's okay if it's a none. So we need to say from types import onion. Whoops. And then we want to go down here and say string and none. And then we need to return something. And what we want to return, it's a session ID and the data from the session. And that's the union to. It could be a string or none. It depends about it's allowed. And the second one, it's a string or none, of course. And then we want to say down below here. So if the session's ID it's inside, then we do something here. Else we will pass and say we'll say something about the session is not correct, and we can say session ID it's created, and then we need the session data. It's equal to nothing, and then we need to return session ID and session data. So the first thing we want to do now, it's creating the create function, so we can test about its creating. So So that's what we want to do now. And we want to go down here to say is new static here, static, and then div create. The create we want just account ID could be a string, and we want to return a string again. It's the session ID and session ID, and of course we need the logging up here. And import logging. I don't know why it's crying a little bit here. I just need to see what's happening. It's because it's typing and not types. Sorry for that. And then we have the logging here. And what we're doing to log, it's should be about it's creating session for account and then account ID, so we can see what's happening. And then we need to session ID, it's equal to session generate. We need to generate a session, so that's what we want now. Now we need a new function up here, static, and we don't need anything, I think. Nope. And return session ID, and the secret key, it's coming from the OS get invent. Import OS get environment session. Let's just be sure we use the right one here. And the next one should be UUID version 4. It's whoops. Then we need to string it up with UUID 4, and we need to import. And before we can return the session ID, we need to create a session ID here, and we need to import the hash clip. And for that we need to say the hash clip, and we need to solve it with the 512. And what we want now is UUID 4, and then we need the secret key. Whoops, secret key, and then encode it for UTF-8. If you don't do this, you will get an error. And then we need to hex it, and then it should be okay. So now we can just generate a session key. We will log this, logging info session ID generated. And for that we can just go down again. We are just going down here to session generate for creating something, and then we can return it. And when we return it, you can see session create, and account ID is equal to account ID. Then we take the account ID inside and create a session based on the create here, and then we're just saying in the session create, and the account ID is what we put inside of the account ID, and then we trigger the create function. We're creating down here, and then we need to generate a session ID, and then we need to put it inside to the database. So now we need to going on the top again, and we need to import the ODM for this one from ODM session import session as ODM session. Going down for the create function down here, and we need session is equal to session, and then session ID is equal to session ID, and account ID is equal to account ID. Then we need to session, create add, and session expires add, and then we need save. And before we can say the date time, we want to go up here again and import date time from date time import, and time delta, that's what we want. Scrolling down again, and here we go, date time UTC now, and the same we need down here, plus we need time delta, seconds is equal to session lifetime, and we need to import that from the session 2. In the ODM here we have a lifetime, so that's what we're taking down, so we know how many seconds we should add for the expiring. And scrolling down here, and that's where we're ending up. So now if everything is going well, this one should, if you click on get and you don't have any sessions, we need to create a new session and need to return it back. So let's going back for the session up here and try the function out. So let's going up here in the top and say from library session import session, that's what we want, and then we need to go down and say log here, and what we want to do inside here, it's just saying the session allowed, select session data from account. And the account ID should be request this one, and token authentication token, and then the ID, ID, and the ID should be inside here, so we can see which token we are working with. And here we go, which account we're working with, sorry. And then we're just saying we need the session ID here. Yes, session ID is equal session ID, and session data is equal to session get, and it's account ID with the account ID, and then we need this session ID is equal to request. I think we just do this, request session ID, so everything here it's fine. And then we put it inside here, and if the session is this one, we just send it, send out and say everything here it's okay, else something is wrong and we don't want that, and then we forbidden. That's meaning if we can't get a session ID, then we're not allowed to do this, and then we will return the forbidden, and that's perfect for me. So let's locking down here and say if session not allowed, account ID trying to get session ID, and it's not the right owner. So we can log if someone trying to do something. And then we need to go up again. And what we want to respond is OK. And then we need the session ID. Whoops. Session ID should be the session ID, and the session data should be the session data in here. And if everything is working well, I think maybe it's time to test it out. We don't have anything here, and we get the session. Let's see what's happening. And if you're going for the, you can see the sessions here, and we have the session data. If I'm going back again and click here, you can see this one is changed. And if you're going back for the database, it's working perfect. So if I'm changing a little bit from E to F, then we should be not right, because the token is not correct anymore. And then we are running in again, and it should be adding it. So that's perfect. Let's delete this one and press it one more time. And then we have the session ID. Let's copy it and put it inside here and enable. So we have the session ID. Let's going back to the code and continue if we have a session ID enabled. Let's going back for the session class here, and then we can go and continue to this one, because now we have the session ID. I think it's test print, and then I can raise it so we just crash the system. That's okay. And then we can just do this, and it should be crashed now. Print test, and that's cool. We're inside here. And when we're inside here, we will make a try, and the try should be account session, and we need to ODM session here again, and then we need to take an object and get it with the session ID is equal to session ID, and then we need to say expire add, and then use 2 underscores to indicate we need another function, and greater than. That's if you have worked with Mongo before, then you know that command is normally it's doing something like Mongo query it's equal to expires add, and then you do something like that, greater than, and then the date. But in Mongo engine it's much easier to do. You can just type down the field and then underscore and then the command, and then we save a lot of stuff here. And then we have the date time UTC now, and we just need to be sure the expires is greater than, and the session ID is what we want. And if we go inside here, and if the session not exist, expect we're going for does not exist. And that's from the Mongo engine hubs here. Because then we can hit this one. And if this hitting does not exist, I think we just need to create a new session again. We just copy this. And what we just doing up here, it's logging info and say session not exist or expires, create new session for account ID. And then we put it inside here. Now we're logging if it doesn't exist, and then we create something new. And then we need a log below here and say dot exist, create new session for account. That's fine. Then we're going up here again and do something magical here. Then we need to say if account session account ID is different from account ID, then we need to return none. Like I said before, so we very sure about an account don't trying to overtake, take over. I think that's the right word. To take over the session ID in the system. So that's why we do this. And then we're going down here and say session update. Session not data update, just update here. And if we do this, it's always be different, because this is a string and this is the object ID. So we need to going up again, and this time we need to import from basin JSON utility. Nope. Object ID, import object ID. That's what we want. We need to convert the string we have to object ID, so it's know what we are working with, and then we are ready. Now we need to update the session if it's allowed. So what we want to do now, it's updated at, it's a date time UTC now, and then we need to expires at, and we need to say time delta, seconds, and session lifetime. And then we need to say account session save. If I've done it right now, then it's meaning we can get the session. If we don't send a session to the system, we need to start there, and we don't have a session put to the system, then it will create it. If we want to take something, it's not all session, then it will block and giving the forbidden, or if it's expired, it will create a new one and return the session. Let's try it out. First we want to take it up, and we already have an error here, so that's nice. I will check it up what's happening here. It's of course, it's because we need to say session data here. Session data is equal to it's account session data. That's what we need here, and then we of course need the session ID, but I think it's already here, so yes. Let's try again. And here we go. If I do it again, you can see it's the same one. So now we can confirm it. If I'm going up here and say session ID is not allowed, it's not setting, that's fine. And if I'm going back and say that's perfect, and let's go in for the Mongo now. We have 2.1. Let's say we edit it and say the account here it's 4 and not 5. That's meaning my user doesn't have access for it. It should be forbidden now. And now you can see that's forbidden because I'm trying to take over. And you can see it's locking here. Let's going back and edit it one more time and turn it back for 5. And the expired date here, we want to say a day behind today and save it up. And if I'm done it right, it should giving me a new session. And it does. And that's perfect, so we get a new session. And I recommend you, when you send a session inside, I will recommend you always to override your locally session ID with the session you get back, because then if the session changed, it will be updated instantly on your system and device, like an iPhone or an Android telephone, or in the browser, whatever you want to do. So that's a recommendation for me. So now we can get a session. Before we ending this video off, I will show how we can update a session data. So I just found a little bit thing here. before we are going for the next function. We need to go inside here and add logging, else we don't get any console here for that. And what we just type here, it's session found and return to client for account. With session ID. And now we are ready to creating the update function. I know we don't respond to the expire state, but we will probably do this in the next video, so you can use that for expiring. I don't think it's having time. It's already have been very long, this video, so I'll try to cut it down. And now it's time to create the update. So let's go down for the update here. And the update, we just need a little bit like up here. Copy this one, and going down. Else we need to copy this, because when you need to update, then we need of course to be logged in, else it should be declined. And when we are logged in, we will get the session data. It's a JSON, so request is equal to JSON. Get JSON. Yeah, that's what we want. And then we need to the session data. We can just go up here, session data. Let's take this and copy down. And again, if session data is not none, then we go inside, else we do something, we will send a forbidden. So just copy this one. And update session. And I think that's what we want now. Let's go back for this one. And we have this one. Let's confirm it's working. It's due. So I will go in for headers and overwrite my test session here. And let's see what we have here. And method not allowed. It's mean we don't have post. So that's probably because we do something method doesn't allow. Let's go in for this one and see what happens. The update session update. That's why we have a post here. We need a post, sorry. And then let's go back and press it up. And the connection failed. Now we have some connection inside. So let's try it out and see what's happening with the error here. It could be because we don't have the 200 here. Let's just play around with it and save it again and put it in and see what's happening. Yes, so that's because we don't have this one. And what we want to return should be the session data, and it should be the session ID, because it could be you have expired and need to update something, then we have it, we need to put it inside again. Let's go up here, and this session data should be this one. I will create a function for that just a moment. So let's see what's happening if we go back and send it. Get the session, that's perfect. The session is this one, and we have the body. So now we only need to get the right data here, and then we can check it in the database. Let's go in for the session here, and let's go in for an update function. We have a create, and below here I'll create an update. It's a static method too. and we will pass it down here. For this we need to say account ID, it's string, and then we need the session ID should be string, and then we need the data should be session data is equal to directory, and we want to return a directory or a none type. It depends on what we hit here. Session ID is, and the session data, it's equal to session get, and then account ID with the account ID and session ID with session ID. That's meaning we just check it inside here. I know we do it before in the Flask session update function, but I will remove that when we are done with this function. It's just so we fast could continue. And then we say session ID is not none, then we do it inside here, else we want to return none. And we of course need one more, because we need to change the session ID with the return, of course. Onion should be a string or none. None. And then we need the account session. It's equal to ODM, and we need to get it here, object get account ID is equal to account ID, session ID is equal to session ID, and then expires at greater than date time, which is in now. We don't need that part because we already check it up here, so we don't need this. That's just doing this overcomplicated. So let's go in for session here and say this session data is equal to session data, and then we need the account session expires at is equal to date time UTC now plus time delta seconds session lifetime, and then we need a session here update at date time UTC now, and then we need to account session save and logging again here. Update session data for account in session is updated. And then we need this down below and say I can't did not have access for this session. So if some reason we have a bug here, we will do this. We will going back for the session here and just replace this one with update, and then we need a session data here. It's equal to here we go, the session data here. So let's going back and see how it's react. And now we have a bug again. I will just figure out what's happening. So let's go back for the session, and I think it's because we need, yes, we need a return here. Return session ID and session data, and Then I discover some bug up here because we return the data. We don't want that, so just make this one. It's meaning we don't need that, the return, and then we can just save it again. We don't need the return data here, so this should happen. The session data here, yeah. Just try again. Then the session data. Let's make a print here because we should have some data inside. And we got it. And something is wrong here. We don't print it out again. So the update, that's going up here and say session data and session data. Oh, we all right. Sorry, that's my mistake. It should work. And here we go. If we going up and say demo session, save it, and we should have demo session. Yes, so that's working. And let's make a log here. Info session allowed account ID account updated session with new data, something like that, and then we just print it out and everything is fine. So that's how we're doing. Now we have a session control of this component, and of course you can, as always, you can find this code on GitHub. I really hope you want to follow me both on GitHub and here on YouTube. You can get my attention. Just smash the comments button with feedbacks and ideas you have and questions and everything you have in the heart. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Just click on the ding below in the right corner, and of course share with your friends. Hit the like button and add it for a playlist. Thank you so much, and hope to see you next time. Bye.